The hardest part about making a perpetual motion machine is figuring out where to hide the battery. The idea of an infinite damage combo has been floated pretty often in Star Rail. After all, with how characters seem to be gaining more and more synergies, along with less and less restrictions nowadays, it seems like it's only a matter of time before we truly reach an infinite damage setup. And well, it seems like someone on Bilibili has cracked the code. What makes this infinite special though, unlike previous infinite loops that used to exist in the past, or exist right now but with very specific restrictions, is that this infinite loop can supposedly be used in any endgame, against permanent for or retired enemy content, aka pure fiction, with characters available in-game right now. And well, Star Rail doesn't really like changing characters' kits once they're shipped out to live, and if they do, they're usually for bugs and the sort, not for playing characters as intended to generate some sort of broken combo. Insert 999 joke about Mono Remembrance here. So then, what exactly is this infinite? Well, it involves a specific team combination of Luocha, E6 Mortenax Blade equipped with Tutorial, E6 S1 Tribbie, and at least an E2 Castorice. Let's start with the easiest to explain. Luocha is purely here to provide AoE healing on every attack. Healing, which not only recharges Castorice's ults, but also keeps Blade's HP topped up so that he can keep spamming his follow-ups. For this configuration, we'll want to max out his healing, since that's all he's useful for. Trying to make him take more turns is not only useless because he can't generate off-turn energy, and thus no eagle abuse, but it actually ends up being actively harmful, as you'll run into downtime on his healing field by doing so. Next, let's cover Castorice. At E2 or higher, every time the team charges up her ultimate, she gets to use both an AoE joint attack as well as her nether wing, totaling 3 AoE attacks every ultimate for the purposes of generating energy for both Tribbie and Mortenax Blade. Not only that, but her E2 means that she only needs to charge 70% new bud for her ult instead of the usual 100%, meaning that with a Luocha that's completely focused on healing, she can regain this ult every 5 attacks or so. As for Tribbie, her ult costs a staggeringly low 120 energy, and each of her follow-ups with her S1 regenerates a whopping 17 energy, before factoring energy regen. Not only that, but she also gains 1.5 energy per every enemy that her fellow teammates hit. Note, not including herself. And with her E6, she not only gets an additional 729% damage boost on her follow-ups, but more importantly to this loop, 1 extra follow-up immediately after she ults. This means that as long as 2 other members are consistently able to fire off her ults, she can provide 4 attacks per ult, which, with enough supplementary AoEs, can be looped over and over again. Slap on an eagle set and she can even cheat out some bonus turns every now and then. And finally, the pièce de résistance, the newest unit who forms the basis of this entire follow-up loop, Mortenax Blade. Believe it or not, nearly every single part of Mortenax Blade's kit is put to use with this infinite. Starting with his looping condition, with the tutorial icon equipped, Blade gets a guaranteed ult every 2 follow-ups. Yup, that's right, 2. I have no idea who thought it was a good idea to give a Nihility unit 55 base energy per follow-up, along with the ability to store 80 excess energy so that he wastes none of it. Please check up on your local Topaz main if you haven't already. It's looking pretty rough for them right now. Anyways, this means that in E2 and beyond, 14 attacks from anyone, including Blade himself, is all that's standing between him and unlimited amounts of damage. At E6, this also counts any instances of personal HP loss towards the tally, meaning that, counting his own ults and follow-ups, he really only needs as little as 9 attacks to continuously spam his 3-piece ult follow-up combo. Wait, what's that? Castorice's AoE skill drains the entire team's HP? Well, looks like we can lower that number to, yup, 5 hits, so long as Castorice is consistently able to get her ult back online. And remember how many hits Cass needs to recharge her ult every single time? Yeah, I think you can start to see how exactly this root goal machine ends up forming. Heck, Mortenax Blade even makes it easier to fuel Castorice's ults due to both his HP per drain per skill and his 50% increase to incoming healing during his ult state, adding extra new bud to every single source of self-drain and healing by him. But that's not all. There's another very important aspect of Blade Z2 that further perpetuates the loop, and it's this right here. Now you might be wondering, what use does changing ults to follow-up attacks have? Sure, it makes Blade's ults hit a little bit harder and lets him use follow-up relics like Duran and Valorous, but we kinda already want Eagle for more follow-up spammage already. No, the character that actually gains the most from Blade's E2 here is actually Tribbie, thanks to a little line on her S1 that adds 12 extra energy to every follow-up she launches. Now, she isn't launching 3 follow-ups every time she ults, but 4. And that makes all the difference when it comes to how easily she can loop back-to-back ultimates. When you link all 3 of Castorice, Blade, and Tribbie together like this, with a never-ending pool of healing reserves thanks to Mr. Receive Divinity, well, it's only natural that something resembling an infinite loop would take place. In fact, during the example video, in Wave 3 we can actually see the exact same sequence repeated over and over again. Castorice ults, causing Tribbie to launch a follow-up, then her joint attack refunds Tribbie's ultimate. With plus 3 stacks to Blade, then prompts his own follow-up, maxing out his energy reserves, followed by another Wings explosion. Tribbie's and Blade's ults are then queued up in quick succession, which then triggers another Blade follow-up, looping neatly back again to another Castorice ult. So naturally, the question begs itself. If this sequence is repeatable over and over again, why doesn't this end with infinite amounts of damage? Well, that's the thing. You can repeat this sequence for a long time, mind you, but it does eventually terminate. Remember how I said that Blade needs 14 stacks to keep producing never-ending follow-ups? Well, that's the thing. This rotation, for those that have been paying attention, doesn't produce 14 stacks per Blade. It only produces 12. The first limiting factor is how exactly Blade's E6 works. See, the additional stack from losing HP is capped to once per ally turn taken, meaning that, with Castorice and Netherwing being the only 2 allies to actually spam turns non-stop, Blade only gains an average of 2 E6 stacks per rotation, despite losing HP 3 times. This also means that equipping Hyacine's Lycone on Castorice doesn't really do anything to help the infinite loop, since we're not short on HP loss ticks to fuel Blade's rampage. If anything, it's quite the opposite. Even if we add in Eagle shenanigans, Blade and Tribbie get another additional attack at most once every 4 of their ults, aka once every 4 sequences. Assuming the best case scenario, where Blade gets to squeeze in 1 extra HP drain stack from his E6 every time each one of them gets to go, this only results in a maximum of 4 additional stacks every 4 sequences, or 13 stacks out of the required 14 needed to go truly infinite. And unfortunately, or fortunately depending on how you view it, you can't try replicating this at a lower equilibrium level to try and get more frequent Castorice ults with a lower new bud ceiling. In fact, I saw quite a few people incorrectly claiming that this infinite loop required the use of level 1 characters and Lycones, which is absolutely not the case. This is because Tribbie's A6, which is responsible for giving her the passive off-turn energy needed to chain her ults back to back, is locked behind equilibrium level 70, aka the point at which Castorice's new bud no longer scales off of ally levels and reaches its fixed maximum of 34,000. In fact, I'd say you should probably level up your characters, considering that the healing threshold for getting Castorice's ults up in 5 hits all but necessitates a maxed out Luocha, with gear entirely focused on maximizing his attack and outgoing healing. On that note, is anyone using Luocha with E2 Blade farming Duke for the huge 48% attack bonus every time he ults, or does it not work that way? Believe it or not though, Hoyo is capable of creating effective anti-game breaking measures sometimes, despite what their recent track history might imply. So, does that mean that this infinite loop is dead for all intents and purposes? Well, the one featured in the video, absolutely. There's a reason it was likely accomplished in a private server, as evidenced by the hidden UID and lack of builds shown. But for those of you that somehow have E6 S1 Tribbie, E6 Mortenax, and E2 Castorice, well, there is one other angle that could get this combo train back on the never-ending tracks again. All this time, I mentioned that it's quite reasonable to kick Castorice to ult within 5 attacks. But what if I told you that for the low price of Luocha's S5, it's entirely possible to have Castorice ult every 4 attacks? Heck, you can even throw in Castorice's E4, which, for those of you that aren't aware, is a 20% incoming healing boost to the entire team, as well as E1 Luocha's 20% attack boost. to further bolster Luocha's healing and lower the build requirements even further. The stat checks are genuinely not that hard at this point. You'd be surprised at how low they are once you have this much character investment. Or not, who knows. But due to the way Blade's follow-up gets queued up in the action order, it's actually pretty hard to say whether or not reducing the number of attacks needed for cast to ult will actually increase their ult frequency and thus make the infinite loop possible. Honestly speaking, I can't be asked to figure out a different rotation that could potentially accommodate this, especially since I don't really deal with private servers myself, and I sure as heck don't own an account with the investment mentioned in this video. I hope this case study serves to show why you should double check what other people say online before passing it off as fact. No shade to the guy who originally made this video, by the way. The fact that this loop is so close to going infinite to begin with, and entirely because it fully taps into every single synergy Mortenax Blade has from E0 to E6, and not from some cheap bugger exploit, deserves both recognition and praise. Where else would you find a team where Luocha's S5 and Castorice's E4 have real tangible value after all? At the same time, though, I hope this breakdown illustrates just how game-breaking Mortenax Blade is. Not just in terms of his current power level, but also in terms of how it takes just a few key units for his absolutely busted internals into an explosive, meta-warping powerhouse team, the likes of which we have never really seen. And with rumors of a certain all-male team floating on the horizon, plus a confirmed hottie, whose original form was all about follow-up spam, I'll just say this: bust, or maybe I'll take it all. Thanks for watching.